What you're about to see is one of the most intense exchanges in Congress this year. Congressman Seth Moulton directly confronts Secretary Hegseth about allegedly texting classified military launch times on an unsecure app. What follows is a heated back and forth where accountability, leadership, and national security are all put on trial right in front of the American people, right in front of the American people.
As I pointed out at the time...
you said that accountability is back. Does that not apply to you?
As I said at the time, Congressman, there were no names, targets, locations, units, routes, sources, methods, no classified information.
Okay, so if it comes back that it is classified, will you take accountability or not? We've already established, you've already admitted that it was classified because everything you get from CENTCOM is classified. You just explained that to me. That's how you justified not answering the question.
Not what I said. I didn't confirm any classification or
Okay, so if...
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hegseth, I'd like to clarify a few important details for the record. When you texted the launch time for F-18s going into combat over enemy territory facing anti-aircraft missiles on an unclassified signal chat, did that launch time come from Central Command, yes or no?
I know what you're referring to, and there were no
it's a very simple question.
Did it come from?
It's a very simple question. Did it come from Central Command?
Well, in this committee, no way in which I communicate or what I communicate on a successful strike is something that I would share.
So you can't even identify the combatant command under which this operation occurred?
Well, everybody knows the combatant.
Okay, so everyone knows it's Central Command. So when Central Command sent you this information, did they send it on a classified system or an unclassified system?
Well, as you know, having served yourself, any way that the Secretary of Defense communicates or provides information in and of itself is classified and not to be discussed.
So what was the classification marking of the launch time when it was sent to you? Because DoD regulations require information on classified systems to be marked.
What was the classification mark time?
Yeah, what was the classification marking? Because
again, classifications of any information in an ongoing operation that was successful are not things that would be disclosed in a public forum.
You can very well disclose whether or not it was classified. It's not classified to disclose whether or not it was classified. And in fact, DoD regulations state that any classified information has to be labeled with its classification. Was it classified secret or top secret?
What's not classified is that it was an incredibly successful mission against the Houthis.
Okay, so it was classified. So are you trying to say that the information was unclassified?
I'm not
okay,
trying to say
that's what
anything.
I thought. You're not saying that. So you took classified information from Central Command that had a classification marking on it, because that's what's required by DoD regulations, and you put it on an unclassified system. So we're going to get a report in a few days from the DoD Inspector General. And if the DoD Inspector General finds what is pretty obvious, both to you smiling there in the witness seat and to all of us up here, that the information was, in fact, classified, do you plan to take any accountability for that?
What I know is that
will you take
everything I
accountability?
share, everything I talk about,
Mr. Secretary, does accountability apply to you or not?
Is classified whether I talk or not.
Does it apply to you or not?
Does what apply to me?
Accountability. You said accountability is back at the Secretary.
And you know what? The Houthis were held accountable for shooting at our
I'm just asking if it applies to you.
Very successfully.
I'm not asking about the Houthis.
The previous administration let our ships get shot at, and nothing was done about it. And thankfully, because of the skill and courage of our troops on the battlefield,
asking about
we actually put them in a place where they called for a ceasefire.
I reclaim my time. I'm just asking if accountability applies to you. It's a very simple question. We use leadership by example.
Of course. Unlike, I serve at the pleasure of the president like everybody else does.
So it only applies to the president, not to you?
I serve at the pleasure.
You talked about the success of the Houthi operation. About how much money did it cost? How much money did you spend on missiles shooting at the Houthis?
Well, you'd have to compare that with what it cost.
I'm just asking how much did it cost?
Divert our shipping lanes around.
I'm told it's several $100 million, maybe close to $1 billion. How many U.S.-flagged commercial ships have transited the Red Sea since your so-called successful operation?
Well, thankfully, unlike the previous administration,
the answer is zero.
Military vessels transit.
No. I didn't ask about military vessels. I asked about commercial vessels. How many commercial vessels? It's been several weeks. How many commercial vessels, U.S. flagged, have transited the Red Sea?
Well, would you, Mr. Congressman, put civilian ships through
the questions are not to me,
military
Mr. Secretary.
ships?
They're to you.
We have responsibly put military
The answer
ships
is zero.
through first.
I reclaim my time. How many generals and admirals have you fired?
I don't know the exact number, but
You don't know the number. It's 8. Can you explain why any of them were fired? Like, just explain why was the Army JAG fired? Why did you fire him?
they all serve at the pleasure of the president. And I think
No, I'm just asking you why.
General Kane is a great example.
I'm just asking
of a
you
leader
why.
that we
And
need.
you probably learned at Princeton what why means. Why did you fire him?
They serve at the pleasure of the president, and we
Why
want better
did you
representation
fire
in
him?
each and every of those.
You can't
each and
explain
every
why
one
you
of those
fired any of
places.
them?
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott.
What we just witnessed wasn't just a tense exchange, it was a masterclass in congressional oversight and the delicate balance between national security and accountability. Congressman Seth Moulton came prepared, and his questions cut to the heart of something incredibly serious: whether the Secretary of Defense mishandled classified military information and whether he will take responsibility for it. This wasn't about political theater, this was about life and death stakes. Think about what was being discussed: launch times for F-18 fighter jets heading into combat over hostile territory. In the military world, timing is everything. The exact moment an operation begins can mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. If that kind of information is exposed, even accidentally, it can put U.S. pilots, sailors, and service members at risk. That's why the military has strict, almost religious protocols about how classified information is communicated. Congressman Moulton, a Marine Corps veteran, knew exactly what to ask. He demanded to know whether the launch time came from Central Command and whether it was marked as classified. These weren't random questions. They were precise, technical, and designed to pin down whether a line had been crossed. And what did we see? The secretary dodged, deflected, and pivoted, not once, but repeatedly. He wouldn't even confirm whether the information was classified, despite the fact that military regulations require such information to be clearly marked. This moment matters because it exposes a bigger question: do the rules apply to those at the very top? Every service member, from the lowest-ranking private to a 4-star general, is drilled on the importance of protecting classified information. Mistakes can end careers, result in prosecution, and even land people in prison. If the highest-ranking civilian in the Department of Defense can share sensitive details on an unclassified chat without consequence, what message does that send to the rest of the force? But Congressman Moulton didn't stop at the mishandling of information. He pressed on accountability. And this is where the exchange became even more revealing. When Moulton asked whether Hegseth would take responsibility if the Inspector General's report found wrongdoing, we saw hesitation, we saw more evasive answers, and we saw an attempt to shift the focus back to the success of the operation. This is a critical insight for viewers. Success on the battlefield does not erase the need for accountability off the battlefield. The mission might have been successful, but process matters. Because when process is ignored at the top, the entire system becomes vulnerable to errors, abuse, and even disaster. And then Moulton turned to cost. And here's where this hearing became about more than just military protocols. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on this operation, potentially approaching $1 billion. Yet, weeks later, no U.S.-flagged commercial ships have resumed transiting the Red Sea. That means the operation, while tactically successful, may not have achieved its strategic goal: restoring freedom of navigation for American shipping. If we spend $1 billion but the threat remains unchanged, that raises very serious questions about whether this was a good use of resources, especially when Congress is already wrestling with defense budgets and competing priorities. Finally, the issue of firing 8 generals and admirals, including senior leaders like the Army's top legal officer, added another dimension. Firings aren't inherently wrong, but refusing to give Congress even a basic explanation undermines trust. The military is one of the most respected institutions in America, precisely because of its professionalism and its commitment to lawful, apolitical service. If senior leaders can be dismissed without transparency, that professionalism starts to look politicized. What we saw today was Congressman Moulton doing what Congress is supposed to do: forcing transparency, demanding accountability, and insisting that leaders answer tough questions even when they'd rather not. And that is why hearings like this are so important. They remind us that civilian oversight of the military is a cornerstone of American democracy. So here's the big takeaway for viewers. This hearing wasn't about embarrassing the Secretary of Defense. It was about whether the rules that protect American troops and keep our government honest apply equally to everyone, no matter how powerful. That's not a partisan question. That's a constitutional one. And I want to hear from you. Do you think Secretary Hegseth should face consequences if the Inspector General confirms that classified information was shared improperly? Do you believe Congress is right to press for answers, even when leaders don't want to give them? Let's talk about it. Drop a comment and share this with someone who cares about accountability, because these questions affect every American who believes in safe troops, responsible spending, and honest leadership.